And we're live. Welcome back to the Loopcast. Today I'm here with Erica and Josh. And happy Wednesday to everyone here in the chat. Once again, we're going to be live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 11. Dom Higgy already there. Yes, a lot of women are upset about Harrison Butker's speech.
How did you know, Dom? Mind
It's always
meld.
it's always funny seeing something like that go kind of mainstream viral, like when kind of normal Catholic views are extended to the general public. I kind of forget how different my thoughts and perspectives are, I guess. But yeah, we're gonna get into that later. I think we're gonna start with what do you call it, like the meat and potatoes, then we'll get into a little bit of the candy. But starting off, we had a really, really heavy, unprecedented sentence handed down to someone of pro-life belief. We're talking about Lauren Handy here. Erica, I think it's just important for people to know, before we get into the sentence itself, which is heavy, it's about 5 years, what were the charges she was accused of and what was the setup?
Yeah, so this story is something every Catholic, every pro-life, every conservative American should know. Like, we're going to teach this to our kids. Pro-life activist Lauren Handy, she's known for being a leftist politically, but utterly pro-life. She was charged and convicted of conspiracy against rights and a violation of our favorite, the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, or the FACE Act for short. She was the organizer of an October 2020 rescue, it used to be known as the Red Rose Rescue, blockading a Washington abortion mill that's run by a man named Dr. Cesare Santangelo. And this man...
That name should ring bells because he's an infamous abortionist.
Infamous abortionist doctor. So she has been in prison since she was convicted back in August of 2023. She was not allowed bail as she awaited sentencing, which is something usually reserved for violent criminals. So she has already been treated just horribly. But she organized this. The backstory is really interesting. She organized this blockade in 2020 after she was protesting outside of Dr. Cesare Santangelo's late term abortion clinic. And a truck driver handed her, who he was there picking up the refuse from the clinic, which is the bodies of these aborted children. He actually handed her and her fellow activist, Teresa Bukovinak, sorry, I'm going to slaughter your name, a box. He handed them a box containing the bodies of 5 late-term babies. These were children who were killed between 28 and probably 32 weeks gestation, is our best guess, based on the photos that circulated. These bodies were given to them, and she brought them home. She said she also had another 113 bodies in her home at one point. And she said she unpacked them, and she described it as the most soul-crushing experience she's ever had in her life. And I did go and look at the photos just to be able to tell you. You can see them on Lila Rose's Twitter feed if you want to see them. It is horrendous. They were babies and they were tortured. There are burn marks. One of them has half a face crushed. It's horrible. She brought them home. She called her priest immediately. She's Catholic. He came and blessed the bodies and has served as a witness to what happened. And she was working toward burial rites. One of her co-defendants, and there are a number of them that I'll get into in a minute, notified the DC Metro Police because this was a clear instance of late-term abortion, federal violations of the Partial Birth Abortion Act and the Born Alive Infants Protection Act. And he called the police to come get the bodies. The DC Medical Examiner still has them to investigate. Obviously, none of this has been investigated. They still have those bodies.
Well, the Department of Justice actually tried to get those bodies destroyed.
Destroyed, right. That's been a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
So she's already been in prison after this experience. She organized a blockade of the clinic. They used furniture, they used their bodies to shut down the clinic and prevent access for women following the discovery of these 5 bodies. So she's already been in prison for 9 months for this. Like I said, not allowed bail, usually reserved. And she was sentenced on Monday of this week. She was given 57 months, including time served. But after that, after almost 5 years in prison, she will also have 3 years of probation. So this is just a shocking sentence. And of course, we come out with all of these, statements from the Department of Justice, like justice has been served. Our favorite Assistant Attorney General, Kristen Clark, who we discussed for her obfuscation of her own misdemeanors and violent attacks on her then husband when she was having hearings for her position, said, using force, threatening to use force, or physically obstructing access to reproductive health care is unlawful. The Justice Department will continue to enforce federal law prohibiting this conduct and to ensure those who seek to interfere with access, read pro-life demonstrators, to reproductive health services are held accountable.
I mean, this is just clown world, right?
She might just assault them herself,
Coming from someone who cut her husband with a knife, comparing that, having
and
her
then
talk
hit
about
it.
violence, when you're
Had
talking
it
about someone
expunged from her
blocking
own
an
record.
abortion clinic
Give me that
of a
sweet
man
lecture.
who murders children. We're not
Yeah.
like I don't think people fully understand. Caesar Santangelo is very comparable to a man who's in prison for life right now because he kills babies
Gosnell.
after they're born, as he should be,
Yes.
Gosnell. And
Yeah.
there's the Department of Justice, instead of taking time to investigate, hey, is this guy murdering children after they're born? We have evidence, over 100 bodies of evidence of this potentially happening. No, we're going to lock up the person blocking the clinic entrance.
And we're
throw her
going
in
to try
jail
to
for 5
destroy
years.
the evidence. That's another like factor here.
Well,
It's just
I mean, it's in
unbelievable.
Washington D.C. So
Yeah.
I mean, the people that live in Washington D.C. in that corridor of power, the last thing they want is to have an abortion mill shut down. It's incredibly important for them to be able to destroy evidence of their own. So I say that, I mean, if it were any other place, they might allow for it to, they would still prosecute for the FACE Act, but they might actually shut the person, the abortionist down. But in Washington D.C., man.
And
Yeah,
we're not even
and
talking about the other co-defendants too. I mean, William Goodman got 27 months, 3 probation. John Hinshaw received 21 months, 3 probation. We have 6 more co-defendants scheduled for sentencing. I mean, these are just people trying to block the entrance there. Pretty much known as like very standard civil disobedience things. I mean, you want to talk about people who do things much worse and don't get punished. I mean, take a gander at college campuses right now.
Exactly.
Take a gander at 2020 BLM riots. I mean,
Yeah, they should have just set a police precinct on fire, and then they wouldn't be in jail.
exactly. So, like, it's laughable. The weight of what's being thrown at them is absolute Banana Republic craziness. And if we want to get to it as well, I mean, there's even calls to repeal the FACE Act. I think there's a hope that this will get appealed to potentially be a Supreme Court challenge to the FACE Act itself, because Mike Lee's been good on this. It's basically a redundant law created where there's already standard laws against the current activities for pretty common civil disobedience, but it was created by Bill Clinton and now used and weaponized by the Biden administration to go after pro-lifers. I mean, if you just want to look at the numbers, we're talking about using the FACE Act 130 times against pro-life activists, and it's been used 3-4 times against people who literally attack churches. We're talking about people that like
or
burn
pregnancy
down churches
centers.
or pregnancy centers. It's never been used to prosecute anyone for blocking access to a church or house of worship, in which there's a couple examples of that. But it's being used now for these people peacefully standing in front of a building, not allowing this man in there.
Yeah, and I think that the FACE Act, we had a good outcome with a case and with Mark Houck when he was charged under the FACE Act for protesting outside of the abortion clinic in Philadelphia. And obviously that story ended in a much happier way. He was exonerated. He avoided 11 years in a federal prison. But this is just the DC-9 here, as they're being called. They're clearly not having such a happy outcome at the moment. It will be repealed, and like you said, Tom, we hope it goes to the Supreme Court because we've got to get this FACE Act thing off the books. Chip Roy has also been really good about this. When these protesters, when all these co-defendants were arrested, he and, like you said, Mike Lee have really started pushing to repeal the FACE Act. But again, it's been absolutely weaponized. This is another case where you can point to the 2-tier justice system that we see in our country right now under the Biden DOJ. So absolutely, I hope that the good that comes out of this story is very much that all sights on the FACE Act, we finally get something done to end this regime.
To be specific too, if I could, you mentioned Mark Houck. Like you're saying that he was prosecuted using the FACE Act. What did he do?
Yes.
He shoved a guy
I
in
think
his kid's face.
I think for the sake of the discussion, I don't want us to get too confused between the different things on Mark Houck and DC-9, precisely because there is a major difference between the two. But I want to key off on what Erica was saying about the 2-tier justice system, because when we're talking about the DC-9 or the January 6th, I think when President Trump, if he gets elected, on January 20th, as soon as he gets done swearing his oath of office, he should turn around and pardon all the J6 people and pardon the DC9, because it's like, you know what? We're not going to have a Justice Department that is going to only persecute and prosecute so-called crimes of one side of the political aisle. We're not going to do that anymore. That's garbage. That's garbage, banana republic activity, and we can't allow it.
100%. Preach it. You heard the order, Donald. The Don is listening.
Let's go.
I mean, it's going against him himself, though, right now. I mean, look at all the charges he's facing over complete nonsense.
Yeah.
It really is hard to overstate how much weaponization the Biden administration has used against political opponents to a point never seen before. Trump, not even close. I would even go as far as say Obama's not even close. Like, this is like mutated on steroids. I'm going after everyone I don't like with the full weight of the Department of Justice and the FBI. And even the FBI too, like with the Mark Out. I know you say you don't want to get into the Mark Out example, like, but just to illustrate,
Really don't.
Mark Out pushed a guy outside of a clinic that was getting in his kid's face, and he almost got 11 years in jail. Now with Lauren Handy, she blocked the entrance. I mean, we're talking about something different, but the Department of Justice sent the FBI SWAT vans to this guy's house, peaceful dad of
There's no question that the Biden Justice Department is absolutely maniacally devoted to persecuting pro-lifers. Mm-hmm. You know, and again, it's like, oh, did you go jaywalking? We'll throw the book at you. I mean, they literally are going to try to up the ante on the sentencing as much as they possibly can, and it's a miscarriage of justice. So maybe for blocking the entrance, she should have got a couple of months in jail. I mean, 5 years.
5 years.
And again, you would make the case that, okay, listen, she might have done some civil disobedience, like you said, but it was to try to highlight a crime. It's like, I want to bring attention to a crime. So you would think, if anything, the judge can take that into consideration. But of course, the Biden Justice Department is so maniacal about abortion right now that they're going to, throw the book and throw the other book and everything in the kitchen sink. And it's not justice at all.
Right. I did want to draw attention to one of the other activists. So this is a 69-year-old John Hinshaw, and we have Lila Rose posted his statement to the court. So after you're sentenced, you're allowed to express your sentiments, address the court, right? And it's very moving. I would encourage everyone to go read it. But he talks about his own wife's maternal love. He talks about his own grandchildren and how seeing the images and seeing these 5 infants who were butchered outside in the DC abortion clinic, it moved him to take this action and to do this. And he ends it with, I'm sorry to this generation that it has lost a third of its own to abortion. I'm sorry that it's lost its members to pornography. I stand convicted, though guiltless. I take on the guilt of this judge. Accept my love for you, judge, as expiation for your guilt. Mic drop, right? Like that's like Christian 101. So beautiful words there from these people, but talk about just chilling for others who want to be in the pro-life movement, who feel called to stand outside these abortion clinics. It's sending a clear message that we will bring the full weight of the law upon you. But I think John Hinshaw's words show who really wins in the end, right? And not to get too sentimental, but I was moved. I was moved by that. I was like, yeah, they knew what was coming. They're going to take it.
Yep. Next up, and we want to get Josh. Josh has things that he'd like to talk about, and I feel bad sometimes I steamroll him. So apologies for that, Josh. You have something that you had on the docket, a poll check about civilizational sadness.
Yeah, I found this, to be interesting. I don't, just like a lot of things in culture, there's 1,000 different reasons for why this might be the case. But they did this survey Gallup did about their satisfaction with their own lives, as well as the direction of the United States. And as the poll shows, like 20 years ago, people felt good about their own lives. They felt good about the country. I mean, there was a few, ups and downs, as you would normally expect from 1980 to 2000. But then, boy, oh boy, since basically 2009, you can just see it thank you, Obama. it just went down, 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 and only went up fleetingly for a
Correlation?
little bit.
Thanks, Obama.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, part of it is social media, like finding out that that several of your aunts are Marxists, like I did through social media. Like that's not always the happiest thing in the world. But and so one conservative looked at this and said, well, people are happy with their own lives, but they're convinced everything's going to Hades in a handbasket, and that's because the left has pushed on everyone this civilizational global catastrophe, like the world's going to end because of climate change, there's only 7 years left, and you pump this to kids for ironically enough for year after year after year, and the world still doesn't die. But these kids are raised on this kind of climate alarmism, and that the world's going to end and everything is terrible, and it gets people freaked out, and they think to themselves like, oh, this is terrible. But incidentally, it's not just the liberals who are like freaking out about the rest of society. It's conservatives too. Now, I don't think we're concerned about the weather. I think we're concerned about the way people are acting.
I'm concerned about the FACE Act.
Right. We have all these gender reveal parties, but there's only 2 colors. How come people, wake up? It's like, it just drives me kind of crazy. But
Josh, wouldn't you, I guess with this poll, you would probably fall in the camp of not thrilled with the direction of the United States as well, right?
No, that's exactly the point. And it's that liberals and conservatives are both gloomy about the rest of the world and the rest of the country, although for obviously very different reasons. But still, overall, I would say conservatives have a little bit more of an optimistic outlook because, well, they believe in the future because they're building and making the future. They're having children. And if that isn't the clearest sign of optimism in the future, what else is there, And
you're starting to sound a lot like Harrison Butker.
Well, I mean, and it's like, the liberals are like, how can I bring a child into a world like this? Mm-hmm. Like, well, I mean, do you think you yourself are adding to the world and making it a better place? And if that's the case, why wouldn't you want to, impart in the world more of you? But if you only think of each additional mouth to feed as a consumer and not someone who can add to the grandeur and beauty of life, then it's like Tim Carney called it civilizational sadness. And I thought he talked about that in his book really well. It's this pernicious Malthus view that, we're just a bunch of, rabbits that are going to eat everything in sight, and all of a sudden there's no vegetation in all of Australia,
Yeah, but Josh, if I could ask you then, why is there the separation? It seems like both sides seem like they think their individual lives are pretty good, but then don't think the country's going in the right direction. So either the country is not going the right direction, or it is, and there's a mismatch of information.
See, that's one of the things that, like, I think it was Charles Murray wrote about this, how the liberals possess this crazy view of how society should be, that gender is a construct and, critical race theory and all this other kind of stuff, right? They are perfectly okay unleashing all these very dangerous ideologies on the world, right? The left loves doing that. But when it comes to their own lives, Charles Murray noted that these liberals live actually kind of conservatively, okay? So what do I mean by this? They get married. They stay married. They don't get divorced. They raise their children. They make sure their kids go to school, and they instill in them, like, work hard, study, try to get good grades. So they're it's kind of weird. They're preaching liberalism, but they're practicing conservatism. And so the problem with that, Charles Murray said, is that the rest of society, they're just taking the cues of the people in the media and academia and what they hear in their K-12 schools or whatever. And so these dangerous isms that are being launched by liberals all over the country are being, they're being soaked in and adopted by people. And so you're seeing, and this cuts across all racial backgrounds, but like a lot of people on the lower socioeconomic score, they're adopting these values that the left is pushing out. And so they are embracing, out of wedlock births, and if they're getting married, they get divorced, and But the liberals, they preach that stuff, but they don't practice it for their own lives. They're not going to take risks. They're going to stay married to, usually to one person, and they raise their kids to, not to go crazy, don't do drugs, stay in school, get in the best schools. So, and the fact is, conservatives are the reason why we're gloomy is that we're raising our kids the way we say we are, and the liberals are raising their kids, in a quote conservative virtues, as it were, per se, right? Not on sexual ethics, of course, but and our beef is like, well, if this is good for you and your family, why are you exporting your crazy ideology to everybody else?
Right.
You're agreeing that the conservative view of life, of raising children and a family, is good, and yet you're trying to tell everyone, hey, man, to each his own. Do whatever you want to do.
Kind of reminds me of, how like some of the biggest race baiters, like females, are often married to white men. Like some of the people that hate white people the most. I mean, you look at like Kamala Harris is a great example, but there's plenty of examples of very prominent anti-white public figures that are married to white men. It's like, well,
yeah, it sounds like they need therapy sessions more than anything else. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, like overall, the left is in favor of exporting all these nasty ideologies that cut us across, men versus women, white versus black, poor versus rich, all this other kind of stuff. I've always said the left is all about dividing, and then they do the next best thing, projection, and they claim that the other side is the one that's trying to divide us. And it's like, what? And they still can't make heads or tails of this. If Trump wins in November, which it looks like he might, I feel pretty good about it. They're just going to be blown out of the water by, here's this guy who they think is the most sexist, racist, divisive person ever, and he's going to assemble a coalition of multiracial, multi-class across all economic and social backgrounds, and it just kind of surprised him. I mean, like,
yeah,
you look
we don't
at the
like
polls in
that kind of
Nevada,
diversity.
and he's going crazy.
The polls, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's not that kind of diversity though. That's not what we want.
Yeah, exactly. I love people. The people who have tolerance on their bumper stickers are always the ones that scream at you the most for not doing what they want. Like,
Sorry.
Yeah, it's
oh wow, live and let live, but you want to hunt us down like we're in the safari? Great, cool, that's very nice.
coexist. Whenever I see
Yeah.
coexist,
I absolutely. That's
Yeah.
that bumper sticker. It just sends me into fits of rage. It's like,
Yeah.
coexist. You don't even like the people that are on the T there. You
That's
literally
right.
would crucify them if you saw them.
That one, and the other one is the "Who Saved Who" with the dog signs. As like,
Oh, that's what. Yeah, that's why
would drive
Josh
me
had to
crazy.
leave Connecticut because every other car has both
Yeah,
of those
yeah,
bumper
exactly.
stickers. I love my grand dogs.
so this segues pretty well. The Harrison Butker speech has ruffled more feathers than I thought it would. It's always interesting when something in our little corner of the country is extends to the mainstream, and then we get Catholic petri dish again. But this one hit more like TikTok, Twitter, like I saw it kind of everywhere. And let's just start. I'd like to frame this because we could talk about this in a lot of different ways. I've watched it multiple times. Eric has as well. I'm pretty sure Josh has. There's two levels of criticism. One is a very secular level of criticism of people on the outside, and then there's some people on the inside who are criticizing it as more of like a commencement speech in itself. Like, was this proper for a commencement speech in general? Was the message tailored properly for college students? And then there's the broader, I hate everything that Catholicism stands for, and this guy's a weird freak, and he shouldn't be the kicker on the Chiefs. So there's two levels, I think. And so I'm going to open the floor. You can take off, but just specify which level you're going to. I think that's helpful for the conversation.
Yeah, can I just make fun of the headline? So I love the most prominent headline that I saw when I was like scrolling around in the secular world on X was Harrison Butker criticizes Pride Month, working women in speech. And like I went back and I listened to the speech again before this recording because I was just like, did he really do that? And the Pride Month comment was like a joke at one point where he's like, I'm all for pride in our country, not that kind of pride, ha ha ha. And everyone in the audience, like the audience, laughs. So that was like,
I love
he
it.
attacks Pride Month. month? Not really. It was a joke. So like, get a sense of humor.
Also, who's the
Oh, but what if we
cinematographer on
did?
this?
Like, so what? Like, I
So
mean, this
what?
idea, it's a
It's
sacred
okay.
cow.
It's
The only
ridiculous.
the only thing that would be unacceptable in today's society is if you set the rainbow flag on fire. If you set the stars and stripes on fire, you know, you'd get on the nightly news.
Yeah.
Get some claps.
And then the working women thing. So I mean, the left just picked up on this and they characterized it without actually quoting him, of course. They just characterized it as like he told women to go home and be mothers, which is not exactly what he did. I listened again because I wanted to be really careful about this, and it was awkward maybe the way that he did it. I'm getting the criticisms from some Catholic women about it, but he's just elevating the vocation to wife and mother above the vocational career concerns. So it's just that he was saying, look, you had, to the women in the audience, he says, I want to address you directly because you have been the victim of lies. And he says, you know, you've done a great thing. You've accomplished a lot to get to this day. But I know that many of you are most excited about becoming wives and mothers and the children that you'll bring into this world. Was it awkward? Could it have been a little bit smoother? Sure. But he wasn't attacking working women by any stretch of the imagination by elevating homemakers. And the
Such an
audience
emotional
reception
issue
was,
for people, man.
it is a
Yeah.
very
So-
emotional. This is like the mommy wars. Harrison
Minefield
just
of-
stepped in it. He took
You know,
his
it's
foot
kinda
and
funny,
he put
though.
it
It's
in the
like-
mommy wars.
For women, it's, you know, if they work for a corporation, it's freedom. But if they serve, you know, their husband and their children, it's slavery. It's kind of funny how that works.
Yeah, very
I think
interesting.
there's a broad misunderstanding of the word vocation. Like to your point, Erica, when I read all the headlines, it instantly went towards he's telling women to go stay home and be a stay-at-home mom, put women back in the kitchen. You can go as crass as you want to go. But if you understand vocation as a call from God, so I even went and looked catechism definition, a call from God to a distinctive state in life in which an individual can reach holiness. I think what he's saying is true, and because women are the only people that become, apparently is a big question right now in the secular world, which is insane
Are
to
you
me.
sure, Tom?
So I can see why that, I guess, was confusing to some people because there's a lot of people that think that's not the truth, but it is the truth. And it's also hard for me to take this criticism seriously when we see the birth rate numbers. We see a lot of very miserable women in their 30s and 40s, not married, ate the lie, now can't have children, are doing weird, unnatural things with IVF, surrogacy. Like those are real problems going on in societies, and we all are acknowledging those to be true. Some people might not think they're evil or wrong, but they're a reality. And so all he's saying is that women are naturally the only people that can have children, and that's something that should be celebrated and cherished, and that he's great. I mean, he even teared up talking about his own wife, the sacrifices that she made, and her picking up her vocation so that they as a family are able to be successful is an amazing and beautiful thing. And like that choked me up a little bit because I have a very similar situation. Again, a lot of this comes from perspective because there's probably women in that audience or in the broader Catholic audience that are hoping for that in their lives and maybe haven't reached there yet. So I can see why that's like a little bit tough for some people, but it's still the truth. I mean, even if you're not there yet, or maybe your vocation isn't motherhood, maybe it's still the religious life or a lay consecrated life or whatever, big V vocation. But I think if anything, we need more of that vocation. That message needs to be louder if we want to solve many of the birth rate problems we see in our country, if we want to continue our race, continue society. It's not going to happen unless we have a grassroots encouragement of motherhood. And what better way than to like tear up saying in a thankful way to your own wife how beautiful and amazing that is. And if you can provide that for your own family one day, that's something to be cherished and celebrated. That's what I took away from it.
Yeah, and I think some of the other criticisms from the Catholic circles that we heard over the last few days were that he, you know, this isn't appropriate for a college graduation when you have all these women sitting in the audience who just spent tens of thousands of dollars to get a degree and like they're working towards a career, and then to be like, and homemakers are the best, because you know it's just kind of it's awkward or whatever.
Well, what is
But
a
the
degree
thing-
though? What's the
Yeah.
point?
Yeah, what is a
Why
degree?
would we want to hear from you, Erica, who got a degree at Catholic University of America
Exactly.
and then decided to start, I don't know, being a homemaker for 6, 7, 18, 15, 20 children, whatever you have?
Hey,
Why should we listen to anything you have to say about this subject?
I know, right? Well, so okay, and I'm sending my own daughters like to college to get degrees. So like I think that the college experience is something that can benefit the homemaker greatly. I mean, I also went on to graduate school in philosophy, and like that's not going to make us any money or anything. And yeah, I quit after I got pregnant with our third on that degree program. But like the I think that to speak to the culture as it is now in a Catholic setting like Benedictine college, and like you said, Tom, to give the message that look, this is the feminine vocation, is to motherhood, and that I think that as Catholics, a lot of times we're caught in this desire to acknowledge all of the bugs in the system in order to feel compassionate and to seem compassionate to others. We're like, okay, we're going to talk about motherhood, but then we also have to acknowledge infertility. We have to acknowledge how hard it is to date, how hard it is to find a spouse. We also have to acknowledge people who choose not to have children and who were confused about church teaching and now regret it. And we have to,
Same-sex attraction.
so it's just like same-sex attraction.
Right,
so like we can't just rejoice in the beauty of this one call, right, to motherhood that all women share. We can't just rejoice in the homemaker role that some women fulfill in our society, and it's a very important role in society. We have to, at the same time, in this speech, he should have also acknowledged all these problems that can go, all these blockades people can have to becoming that. I don't think that's true. I think that in a book about marriage, like an 800-page, a 400-page book like Brad Wilcox, Get Married, he does go into all of these blockages and all these difficulties people find in becoming mothers and becoming fathers and having good marriages. That's the place for that. But in a graduation speech or like an op-ed, you can just say being a homemaker is awesome and my wife is amazing and get a little teary-eyed. That's okay to have those speeches too.
That
No,
shouldn't
it
get you
just-
kicked
it-
off
it-
the Chiefs.
Yeah,
Right, I mean,
that's going to be interesting to see if it affects his career.
It
that
won't.
he
Yeah,
said
were
this.
they going to get rid of a great kicker because he annoyed a few people online? I find that hard to believe.
Super Bowl kicker.
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
could be safe, maybe.
I agree with what you're saying though. Like sometimes when you talk about a topic, and then everyone else wants to bring something else up. It's like if you give a mouse a cookie, then he's going to want some milk. You give him some milk, then he's going to want
I know
a straw.
that book because
Then you
I'm
give
a
him a
mom.
straw, he's going to want a napkin. And you're like, give me a break. And so like, it's definitely the case on this topic, but abortion's another one of those, So like anytime you talk with Catholics, especially liberal Catholics, about abortion, oh, well, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the death penalty, or let's talk about
And
immigration, or let's talk
immigration,
about, just
laundry.
wages and all this other stuff. And it's like, oh, okay. I mean, you know what? I'm happy to talk about all these issues, but when we talk about immigration, we just talk about immigration.
We're not.
When we
like,
want to
"But what
talk about the death penalty,
parents?"
we just talk about the death penalty. But
Such a
this
good
one
example.
issue of abortion, once we start talking about that, suddenly we got to talk about everything else except for whether or not we should be able to kill babies. It's just kind of funny. It's almost like you are okay with the killing of babies. And the same thing with this homemaker stuff. You get the feeling whenever you talk about this, like, we used to have for generations and generations, women would be in the home and they would raise the family and the kids. And by the way, it was hard work. There was dignity in this hard work because this was before modern appliances. You didn't have dishwashers and
Oh my gosh,
washing
I
machines.
cannot imagine
It would
the
be
washboard
very
out in
hard
the
work.
river.
Water.
Very hard work. Yeah, go get the water. And now it's like, well, because we have all these modern conveniences, maybe they could enter the workforce. And it's like, fine. But it's interesting about this. Whenever you suggest, what about women who want to stay home and don't want to work? And maybe they would do some other things for income on the side, like a side gig, like photography or whatever. But like for the most part, their primary vocation would be a homemaker. And you get people so emotional about it. They get so angry, like, no, we fought these mommy wars in the 70s and 80s, and we never want to ever go back. Never go back to this. We all need to work as corporate drones. Like, really? What?
That's so awesome. Right.
The other, and I just thought of this, the other element to all of this is, I think from a secular perspective, education is thought of as very differently. And I know Eric and I are probably similar in this, but it was like unfathomable to people that a woman would spend money to go to college to then potentially not use said degree after college because they end up becoming a mother or get married and stay at home. And I think Benedictine for sure has a different model of that, of like what education is. And I think there's value in going and getting a robust classical Catholic education to the human person and the soul that
Absolutely.
go beyond, oh, so now I can go work at KPMG with an accounting degree. Like, no slight
Yeah.
on people that work at KPMG or having an accounting degree. It's just if you were to go to a secular school, it would be much different. I think originally universities started off with a much different intent, but that's what's kind of developed into is like,
Yeah.
you
Career
go,
track only,
you get
right.
your credential, you get to go
It's
work
career
at
training.
KPMG. But like at Benedictine, you're going to go learn truth. Like you're going to have truth revealed to you. You're going to be incubated in an environment with the sacraments, with other good Catholic people, have a lot of philosophical Catholic discussions. It's the thought about how to live the good life. And like I can
Yes.
even say for myself, I went to Ave Maria and I utilized certain elements of my degree, but it wasn't me going there to get accredited to then go work at a big company. Like I discovered myself and my beliefs there, or I was further cemented in those beliefs. And that's beyond dollar value. Now, of course, not ridiculous. Like I'm not talking like $80,000 a year. Of course, it has to make sense financially. But
But
that
it's almost like
is
education
deeper.
has a value in and of itself.
Correct. And the way that it's being talked about
Shocker.
secularly of like, oh my gosh, people would go there and like not, go be an accountant or whatever is like, yeah, plenty of people do that. And like, look at Erica, for example. You're giving a great example. Like how much of a wonderful, smart, intelligent, like kind person that you
Oh,
are.
gosh.
All of that came through your experiences in life. And like, you're doing this at the same time as being the absolute heart and soul of your family. And I'm like, your husband, I'm sure would say all of the same things. Your
Yeah,
kids
one
would
of
say
the-
the same things.
One of the lines that really gets me is when they're like, well, okay, so homemakers so great. So those women just went and got a degree they're never going to use. Oh my goodness, no. Like being a homemaker isn't like you turn off your brain and you just become like this automaton, like nanny / maid for the rest of your life. Like you need skills to do this motherhood thing. And like with each child that we've added, I have needed to call upon more skills and more thoughts that I was
This
getting
is why
through all that
I
education.
took psychology class.
Yeah, exactly. And like my interlocutors with the great thinkers of Western civilization, well, now I have 7 interlocutors who want to have deep conversations all the time. And I'm like, how can I translate Kant for an 11-year-old boy? And like, it's hard, people. I needed that education.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
as all parents know, when kids get to bed, they become
Yep,
dehydrated philosophers.
Dehydrated philosophers. It's true.
Daddy, why is the sky
Yeah.
blue? I'm thirsty. Shut
Yeah.
up. and
So
go to
for all the
bed.
girls out there who want to be homemakers, who are aspiring to be the homemakers someday, and people are like, oh, well, you're not earning money or something. You know how much money I am saving the American economy
Oh my
by
gosh.
being the primary homemaker here? I mean, my friend Ivana Greco, who, book drop, has a great chapter in the For God, Country, and Sanity Catholic Vote's new book, which you should all go purchase right now. She has a chapter on this in the book about the value of homemakers to society and how our policy should better reflect the hard work and skill it takes to be a homemaker, whether mostly mothers, but also fathers too sometimes. But honestly, like the 2 things every woman should do who wants to be a homeworker, she should get a liberal arts degree studying the great books, poetry, all the great thinkers, philosophers, and she should work at a bagel shop for at least 2 summers of her college career to fund it. Because my time in the bagel shop doing short order cooking was the best preparation along with philosophy for motherhood. So I just want to throw that out there.
Short
Little
order cook
advice
is
for
your
all the girls
short or the
listening.
orders. No.
Short. Hey, I'm a short queen.
Yeah, short
yes,
queen.
I am a short queen. It's also
and then
good to be short with small
To that
children. You
point
don't
too,
tip
like
over.
my experience as a landscaper, like I worked landscaping in
Yeah,
high
Todd
school.
was a landscaper.
And
Huge benefit.
that was super formative to me, almost in some ways just as formative as college or a lot of my formal education. You just learn so much virtue there. But yeah, to your point about the value of a woman.
Are we going through what we did for summer job?
Dude, I want to hear yours. Do you have
Yeah,
a
what'd
fun
you
one?
do, Mercer?
Okay, what department did I work at Sears?
I didn't know you were at Sears.
Clothing?
Got to be more specific.
You were a
Women's
clothing
clothing?
salesman?
Women's
Not
clothing.
women's clothing. Come on
No.
now. Were you like in the suits department? Like
Kids department, bro. And I was single.
Perfect.
Yo,
That's not.
I was awesome. I was investigating all these cribs, and I knew how to put it all together. So when I was a dad, I was ready to roll, dude.
That is
You're
I
awesome.
prepared.
sold cribs. I sold
Skills.
baby seats, car seats, whatever.
wow, I didn't know that about you.
And then I remember when the
cool.
Minneapolis weather gal came in, and I was like, "Hey, I know this lady," and I was able to sell her on everything. Like, "Oh, this is great." I was good at this, man. I
Well
was great.
done.
Come
You
on,
are a
man.
salesman, Josh.
When they first came, I applied for the job. They're like, "So hardware or what?" I'm like, "No, kids." They're like, "What?" And I killed it, dude. I was awesome.
Making commission. So, like,
And I
That's
just
so
think about that
cool.
because we're talking about college today. 25 years ago today, I graduated from college.
Congratulations.
congratulations.
25 years. Dude.
25.
And congratulations to all the people that it was also funny at Benedictine too. My brother went to Benedictine. Like, I know Benedictine. I've talked to President Minnis. Like, I understand it very
He's been
well.
raving about it.
Oh my gosh, he's the best.
That was funny.
Raven, I'm not going to caw on the program, but go Ravens.
Gotta
And
get the dad jokes in there.
yeah, but just a phenomenal school. It's funny that they brought up that AP article. He brought up the AP article in
Yeah,
his speech
Butker did. Yeah.
about how like they thought that it would kind of be like, oh, what's this cult going on? But instead it was kind of met with excitement from the students as like a little bit of a badge of honor. And I feel like there's a little bit of that going on here where like people are seeing this as like everything he's saying is so different. And it would have been easier for him to just say, go chase your dreams. But like he took the time to make to actually make a statement, and I admire that. And guess what? From a PR marketing standpoint, all good stuff because that speech is at like 173,000 on
Yeah.
YouTube. That's going to be a lot more than the go chase your dreams people. Like, no offense. And there's some
Yeah.
other great messages out there, but
I saw a tweet or an X post, I should say, from some Catholic thinker, and they were like, "Okay, Benedictine College is just starting to come onto the radar of like people think of the big Catholic schools, like the solid Catholics, like Franciscan, Christendom has been around a while, Thomas Aquinas College. They're like, look out, here comes Benedictine. If you want to get in, you got to apply this year because they predicted
Yeah.
in 5 years Benedictine's going to be turning students away." So I was
Just
like, yeah.
maybe
Thanks,
they'll be
Harrison.
considered the Notre Dame of
All good
Missouri.
PR. Yeah.
Because Avi's already got the
They
Notre
might
Dame
consider
side
that
down,
slander.
so.
Maybe Notre Dame should endeavor to be the Benedictine of Northern
Yeah, there you
Indiana.
go.
Maybe that's how we
That's a
should
good
say it.
challenge.
Yes,
Listen up.
sir. But yeah, love all the ladies out there. I hope that was helpful. It's just hilarious, like this conversation. Like somehow he doesn't love women. Like his wife is obviously the most important person in his life, and just got misinterpreted up and down. But shout out to Harrison. First off, just keep it up. I think he's a phenomenal witness for a lot of people. And so one thing that I wanted to touch on before we get into the Twilight Zone. So I saw a really interesting thing, and I'm curious perspectives on it. So we talk a lot of immigration on this show, and there's a new president-elect in Panama, Jose Raul Molino, and he is promising to shut down the Darien Gap, which is a very interesting change in policy from Panama and global immigration as a whole. For those unfamiliar, the Darien Gap is a very dangerous migration route used by over 500,000 people last year. Many deaths, a lot of abuse, lots of sexual assault because it's ran mostly by gangs. And so this guy, Molino, funny enough, kind of a tangent, but in Panama, the guy running, this guy was his vice president. He actually got put in jail for money laundering. So he kept the campaign going with the vice president. This guy's the vice president, and he's in now. And he said the previous policy in Panama was basically just to bust people through as fast as possible. They were just trying to keep it going. But because of pressures being
Because
put
they didn't
on-
want to take the gangs on, you're saying.
Exactly, right. So it's kind of a rollover, just going to let people through. And this guy's quoted saying, Panama and our Darien is not a transit route. It is our border. And so another quote from him, in Panama, there's no kind of suppression with this situation, just free passage, humanitarian aid that didn't manage to reduce the number of assaults, rapes, homicides, and deaths along the Darien route. The big question is, does he have the manpower to execute, basically? A lot of people are skeptical because it's such a hard terrain to navigate, even for like enforcement personnel, that they'd be able to do it effectively, and let alone kind of stand up to the gangs. So, but we've had precedent from El Salvador really doing a good job and stepping up there. So it just feels like there's somewhat of a shift going on in Latin America as to how they're even going to treat it, because we think from an American perspective of our problems with immigration. Could you imagine being a small country in Latin America, basically being ran by gangs and having hundreds of thousands of people just trample through.
Well, and
the
Panama
countries.
is at that pinch point of the funnel where you have all South America coming up through, right through Panama, so in that Darien Gap. So if they could get a handle on what's going on and push back against these gangs, that would be tremendous for the entire North and South America. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I was looking into the Darien Gap too, and it is so we've talked about the 24,000 Chinese nationals who came across the border illegally in 2023. There's more now. It was 24,000 back in December, I believe. But the Darien Gap is the primary route. It's kind of the Cadillac route for people trying to get through. It's the most expensive for immigrants to go through. So they go and they land in Venezuela and they get up through the Darien Gap, and it is the most expensive. Those coyotes charge the most. It's the primary entry point for Chinese nationals too. Most of those have come through there. So it is very much a international, like there are all kinds of people, like the whole world is coming through there. And
Huge
yeah,
problem.
so for huge problem for Panama. And the history of the United States involvement in Panama, like we think of the Panama Canal going back to Teddy Roosevelt, right? The history of our involvement down there, it's pretty interesting. And I'm going to watch this story. There's the Biden administration's involvement in Panamanian politics. I mean, it's not like they're working there, totally independent of United States interests either. There's also stories coming out of Guatemala about the United States pressuring the AG there to stop their probes into child trafficking. And so it's a very interesting story. And I hope to update everyone on that, this coming week for sure. So yeah, it's not just Panama. They're not the only actor in their own country, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So
and also after reading all of this too, hilarious to think that there's any kind of humanitarian goodwill from just safe and sound Americans being like, oh my gosh, let them in. Like, why can't we just be basically broadcasting the world to take them in? Sending them through this Darien Gap is like unthinkably evil. Like people that don't need to go through there.
Right.
Somehow
Where's
it's
the
compassionate
compassion?
to allow people to go through there and get raped or assaulted or die.
Very dangerous for women.
I agree with you. There's two problems with it. Number one, like, why is it selfish to want people to stay in their own country and for them to prosper in their own country rather than just leave the door open and let whoever wants to come in? Like, I always find that odd. Like, you're selfish, like, what? Why am I selfish? Why am I evil? I don't understand that. Like, every other country can have borders and say we're only allowed this many people in. But if we say, maybe we should shut the door, and you're like, you're racist and evil.
Josh, but America's an idea. America's just an idea. And
it's just a parking lot. Yeah, it's just a parking lot. Whoever wants to come in. Yeah, give me a break.
We are citizens of the world, the global people that we are.
The Wall Street Journal pushes that. The Wall
Don't
Street
wake
Journal
up angry
pushes
populist Tom. I'll get angry. The World Economic
He'll go on
Forum
another
people.
rant. I'm going to wake up angry populist Tom. It's what I do.
Angry populist Tom comes out.
Pitch
to play
you a
every once in while.
COVID headline going on there.
You know who I would love to debate though? Now that he's open to it, President Joe Biden.
Yeah, there you go.
He said
after 6 cuts, he said he's going to do it.
Yep, twice, not 3 times, and he wants to do it now rather than in October because he doesn't want people to remember.
Well, he won't remember it for sure.
Nice.
Do we have that? Did you watch?
But
that video?
you have to remember though, Donald Trump had. I mean, I think a stand-up comic Shane Gillis is right on this. He diagnosed this. I got to give him credit for it. The reason why Trump was able to get he debated like 100 Republicans, remember, back in 2016, and he destroyed them all. And it was because he got underneath their skin. And then Hillary too, she's like, it's just terrible to think that someone like you would be in charge of the laws of this country. And he goes, yeah, because you'd be in jail. He's just so funny. And he would get under their skin, but he could never get underneath Biden's skin, get inside Biden's head because there's nothing in there but a few mothballs bouncing around. And so he couldn't get Biden off his track, and Biden would just get up there and like drugged up and drone on.
It's true.
So he needs a new debate strategy. Trump does to go up against Biden.
Yeah, I'm curious what he's going to do. And then I don't know if you mentioned
because you're debating a zombie.
Did you see that RFK Jr. went on Shane Gillis' show? He has a podcast.
He's not.
So he went on Shane Gillis' show and he talked about his abortion statements.
Oh, has he got a new position again?
Yeah,
every 10 minutes. Like, wow.
Spinning around.
He walked it back because he said he thought that no one was getting elective abortions in the 3rd trimester. So he's like, no woman would ever.
It's not what he said. It's not what he said, though.
Not what he said to Sage Steele on her show, but on Shane's show, he's like, yeah, I just didn't think it was happening, and then someone told me and showed me facts and statistics, that yes, indeed, it's actually happening in like alarming amounts of numbers. And so now he's like, oh no, I'm not.
The man's
for it
a
up
weather
the third
vane.
trimester.
That's
So like
been
he would be in favor of allowing third trimester abortions until he finds out that they're happening. Then he doesn't want them.
Yeah.
Yes, that was his essential.
Love the
argument.
logic there, buddy.
Yeah. Bye bye RFK.
Yeah, because he's for medical freedom, is what he said. And like, there's definitely things I agree about, but like, I think this is definitely somewhat of a pander to try to like, oh, I'm trying to win back some of the young pro-life people, because I admire his ability to go on podcasts and dialogue and say like, hey, I was wrong, or I was right about this.
He can
I was
put
wrong
two
about that.
sentences together.
Wait.
They're just
on the Howard Stern
contradictory
show.
to.
Tom.
Yeah, what's up?
You're saying you admire him for having the courage to go on shows and argue his views. Like, what risk is there? Like, is he going to go from 6% to 8% or 6% to 2%? I mean, like,
I admire that on principle because
ooh.
Biden's not doing it. It's like, and no Democrat does it. They don't go on hostile shows. Like RFK Jr. has gone on everything. Talk about everything that someone my age would listen to. Biden's
I don't
not
think
doing
that's a
that.
mark of courage for him. I think that's just a mark of he likes to be.
He just needs
heard.
publicity,
He
right.
just likes publicity. I don't think it's courage at all.
Did I say courage? I said I admire. I never said.
all right. But why admire
I never said it
him?
was
I don't know.
courageous. I just said I admire it on principle.
Oh,
Too
I
much.
thought you
Look,
admired.
Look, I'm the
Generation.
closet RFK stan on the show. RFK and Vivek.
Boo.
Not anymore. No,
But yeah, the ship has
RFK
sailed,
lost me.
unfortunately.
He went the way of all the Kennedys to me.
Not all of the Kennedys. I'm still,
Yeah, all his siblings hate him, or they're like, no.
Well, right. I was just giving props to Eunice Shriver. She was
I'll
still
take
pro-life.
Eunice Shriver. Okay, all the male Kennedys. Is that okay? Can I just yeah.
All right, we got slide in the
Messed
Twilight
up.
Zone now. Josh, what do you got for us this week?
Well, speaking of abortion and Democrats, I mean, I don't know. Did you guys see this headline? I mean, this cracks me up. The NBC News decides to write a news story about Senator Bob Casey, horrible Catholic, pro-abortion senator, but he had been known for so long as being anti-abortion, right? But now he's in favor of codifying Roe v. Wade into law. But see, so the NBC, I mean, was this an intern who wrote this headline? Did you see this? Senator Bob Casey, anti-abortion Democrat, backs bill to codify abortion rights. Now, I feel like you don't really even have to read the article to go, if he backs abortion rights, then he's not anti-abortion. I don't know. Call me crazy.
That's your editor brain speaking, Josh.
I mean, hello, I guess it's politics. We're used to people, having complete and total contradiction. It's like Bob Casey, a Catholic who wants you to know he still cares about Catholicism so that hopefully you'll vote for him, loves killing babies. So, vote for him anyway. Like, give me a break. It's like, it's total garbage.
Isn't this
no
a
one's
recurring
buying this
beef?
anymore.
You
No
don't
one.
like Bob Casey, right?
Oh, I can't stand him. I mean, his dad was a pro-life rock star, okay?
I think this is what, yeah.
Yeah.
But his son is terrible. Bob Casey Jr., he's a fraud. And no Catholic can vote for Bob Casey and say, oh, well, I thought he was pro-life. No, you knew he supported abortion, and you didn't care because you don't care. I don't buy that. So I've heard all these polls. I remember Democrats for Life. I applaud the work they're trying to do. They're trying to say, hey, you like the little guy, support pro-life laws because they help the little guy. And Democrats for Life would always say, 40% of Democrats are pro-life. I don't believe it. The proof is in the pudding. They keep electing guys like this who say, oh, well, I don't really super like abortion, but I want it available in all 9 months at taxpayer expense. Sounds like you kind of like it.
Yeah, right. Sounds like you're all right with it.
Sounds like you're lying.
I love Josh's recurring beefs. I'd say you have like 4 or 5 of them, and I just remembered in the back of my head, I was like, you really don't like Bob Casey. This isn't as much about the headline. I think you just got beef with him.
Bob Casey,
the guy who's
Nikki
running
Haley.
against him.
Nikki Haley for sure.
Nikki Haley's in there.
We need someone in the
I
chat.
don't even
to
like the
name
guy
all
who's running
Josh's
against
beefs.
him, okay? The guy who's running against him is McCormick, and he's not 100% love him all to pieces, okay? I mean, he's got his flaws, no doubt about it. But it would be an absolute upgrade to get rid of this fraud pro-abortion psycho Casey, who manages to be so wildly pro-abortion and yet being so boring. He is the most boring guy in the world. Get him out of office. I mean, Fetterman is pro-abortion, but at least he's interesting
likes
to listen
meat,
to.
though.
At
And
least
every
he's
once in
fun
a
to
while,
listen to.
Fetterman, he might throw you a curve and be like, oh, I didn't actually expect him not to be psycho in this. That was kind of nice. I would never vote for the guy, but at least, you know, he'll upend things every once in a while. He's interesting, you know. He's not a doctrinaire communist like Casey, who's a communist who's boring. Get him out of there.
We need a running list of Josh's recurring beefs, like
Yeah.
vegans, Bob Casey, Nikki Haley for
Haley.
sure. Nikki Haley's probably the queen of the recurring beefs. We'll come up with a list and get back to you.
She got less than 8%. Yeah, single digits in the West Virginia primary. What a shock.
She was still on the Indiana ballot. I was surprised.
Oh, really?
Yeah, still because she got enough signatures to get on the ballot.
Never Nikki.
Never Nikki. Erica.
All right.
Twilight Zone.
Yeah, so I'm going to pull out here. We had a story in the Wall Street Journal how 20 years of same-sex marriage changed America. After dire predictions, the effects have been largely positive, a new study finds. Okay, let me just start. First of all, the backstory. This week marks 20 years since Massachusetts became the first state to, through an activist judge, force same-sex marriage legalization on its people. Of course, we all know the story from 2004. Then we get to 2015 with Obergefell, when the Supreme Court forced it on the
all 50 states.
My lights just turned off. Whoa, weird. All 50 states from the federal level. Someone doesn't like this story.
Trump turned off the lights.
Trump turned off my lights. No, I think it was the DOJ. They're in here. The FBI's at the door. All right, so that's the impetus for this story. The Rand Corporation came out with a report proving that all the fears conservatives had in 2004 have been disproven, and in fact, gay couples have benefited from marriage. I just want for anyone who saw this headline and was like, oh gosh, maybe it was a good thing, maybe we were wrong. Let me just break this down. The metrics that the Rand Corporation or the Rand report looks at include things like, did same-sex couples benefit? Did they get more Social Security? Do they own more homes, etc.? A very negligible portion of the United States. In raw numbers, we're looking at less than 1% of U.S. adults are in same-sex marriages. Less than 10% of LGBT Americans are in legal marriages, quote unquote. Use that in scare quotes. So this is a very small portion. The way that they measured it does not actually tell you, was gay marriage good for America? So what I want to argue is right up there with Matthew Schmitt's. Again, commercial for our book, For God, Sanity, and Country.
Ding, ding,
Matthew
ding, ding.
Matthew Schmitt's chapter in there, How Gay Marriage Changed America. You can't measure it by looking at, did a couple of gay couples benefit financially and get hospital visitation rights? That's no longer the question. What gay marriage actually did to America is it made it less free, more hostile to the conservative viewpoint. It changed the entire makeup of the American elite, pushing it to the far left and causing more and more conservative voices to be silenced. And he goes through all of this. Basically, the fight for gay marriage saw the full embrace of Marxist, Gramsci-like tactics and cancel culture. He calls it the first great triumph of cancel culture. So if you see this headline in the Wall Street Journal and you think, oh, Wall Street Journal, they're pretty, balanced and conservative sometimes. Maybe gay marriage wasn't that bad. No, you need to go read Matt Schmitz's How Gay Marriage Changed America in our book, For God, Country, and Sanity. Order it today.
Have you heard of the book After the Ball as well?
I have not heard of After the Ball. Do tell.
It was written by this lady, Rosaria Butterfield, and she was a former
I am familiar with Rosaria, yes.
Yeah, I wasn't written by her, but she was the one talking about it. But 1990s LGBT movement used it as kind of like a playbook as sorts. And it was so surprising to me how I think the narrative sold to us is that this was a very like organic human rights-esque movement where everyone just came to their senses and was like, oh no, we need to do this. It was a very planned and strategic execution of changing public perception on a very small minority of people. Because if it was a pure grassroots thing, 1% of America, like that's not enough for a total grassroots movement. So there was enough done behind the scenes to change people's perception to basically achieve this level of activism from the
Yeah,
group.
and I think she makes the point too in some of her writing. She had a great article on this issue a couple of weeks ago. I'll try and find it. But the point she makes is the legalization of gay marriage and this argument that, well, they just want to be left alone and to raise their kids the way they want to raise them. That was a complete facade. And legalizing gay marriage for this less than 1% of the American, it was just one stop on the conveyor belt of the entire sexual revolution machine. And so now what we're seeing is, straight line you can draw from that step to Americans. So this was an interesting stat in the Wall Street Journal story that they actually acknowledged. In 2004, 64% of Americans were against the legalization of gay marriage. Just anyone. You ask anyone, and the 64% are going to say, no, this is not a good thing. It would be bad for the kids, et cetera, et cetera. Today, it's completely flipped. 20 years later, 70% of Americans support same-sex marriage. And you also see things like the trans movement. This was just one step on the trans movement, accepting people as they are. Any gender, all 46 genders are acceptable, and we're going to push it on the kids. And you're going to see the cancellation of voices who speak against mutilation of children, and they're canceled, and on and on. So the legacy of same-sex marriage was never intended to be a more compassionate, tolerant American public square. Far from that, it was to push out traditional Judeo-conservative voices and to radicalize the mainstream narrative. So it's less tolerant, more hostile,
And it's like even
and
the
more
marriage thing,
divided.
they don't even care about as much as then now they use that to promote surrogacy. Like gay couples suddenly have a quote right to children, and therefore
Child trafficking.
you need to pay for the surrogacy. Which who cares if that exploits moms in foreign countries? Because
Well, who
everything
cares
is
about the
about the
baby?
edification of your sexual appetite and your desires. That's all that matters. It's the sexual revolution writ large.
Yeah, exactly. So Wall Street Journal for the loss on that one.
Okay. You guys thought that there was going to be a viral moment, funny moment from the week, and Tom wasn't going to catch it. You're wrong. I always find it. This one, my favorite mayor of America, probably Eric Adams, mayor of New York City, is coming up with creative solutions to the immigration problem that they kind of self-created by becoming a sanctuary city. So they have one of the statistics they were covering is how many of them, an argument commonly used is that when migrants come over, it's going to be good for the economy because they're working migrants. Over half of the migrants that do come here don't have a job and don't intend to get a job. So that naturally puts a lot of stress on welfare structures, or even just the structures of a city in general. I mean, just imagine
Social
having
services, right?
Social services, et cetera. And so he was talking about that and how there needs to be creative solutions. A direct quote is that he said that illegal aliens could be used to fill New York City's lifeguard shortage because they're, quote, excellent swimmers.
Oh,
Creative.
wow.
Gotta hand it to him. Creative.
I mean,
Can you imagine if Ron DeSantis said that? If the white governor of California had come out with a line like that? They're excellent swimmers, but Eric Adams. Just like,
I'm amazed. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, as someone familiar with some slurs, that's pretty close to a couple that I could think of for immigrants, but it was said by Eric Adams, so it's all good. But
you wish the guy would have just went the next step further with this and just had a good sense of humor on it. Who would have just said, you know why Latin America can't compete against us in the Olympics? Because anyone who can run, jump, or swim is already here. Like, just say it. Just go for broke. Come on, man.
I mean, he's right there. He's right there in the door.
Right there.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me. I don't know if he was expecting people to be like, "Oh man, that's such a good idea," because it reminds me of the classic video of The View where the woman was like, "Oh, Donald Trump, you hate immigrants? Like, well, who's going to clean your toilets?" And she was just like looking at them like, "Oh man, they're really going to think that was a bar." And they're like, "Oh no, you can't say that." She's like, No, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant." But Eric Adams continues to just be hilarious to me. Like, he has a video when he was, I think, a senator or chief of police, but he did the video where he was searching a home. You guys have seen this video, right?
I don't remember.
no.
He was like doing an informational how to search a home of a youth, and he kept there was like sad music on the background. He's like, "Look behind this picture frame. What's behind it? What could possibly be behind it for a teenager?" bullets. And then the next one was like, oh, and since this pillowcase is a little hard, what could be in it? A gun. And like everything he like looked behind, there was like a gun or a drug of some kind. And
Oh my God.
I can't even describe it properly. It's funnier than anything SNL has ever come up with. And I imagine it just enrages. Similar to like this, the swimmer thing. Like the Babylon Bee could have written that, but apparently they're not smart and talented enough to write something funnier than just reality. Like that, that is truly funnier than.
Right. They have a tough time on their hands because, they come up with something like, no one's going to believe this. And then 2 weeks later, someone says it. They're like, oh my goodness. So they must have a policy, no matter how crazy this sounds at the Babylon Bee. We got to push this satire out because it might become true in a few weeks. Someone will say it's something that dumb.
It's like, I feel like I'm living in just a giant sketch group of America. And the world is a sketch group right now. Be hard to do satire in a world this crazy. But that does it for this podcast. If you want to help us out, loopcast@catholicvote.org. You can join the Champions Club. That is hands down the best way to help us out here. Thank you so much to everyone who donates and supports us there. That's the only way we're able to do this. We appreciate you so much. Leave us a review, like, and subscribe on YouTube. Reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify help tremendously. And if you want to email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org. If you're listening at this point, we want to do a Ask Josh segment, okay? So we're going to start soliciting for some of these responses. There's Dear Abby, but now we have Dear Josh. Imagine a man who despises vegans and Nikki Haley answering a relationship question, or was someone in the wrong? I don't know. So if you want to get that going, now's the time, loopcast@catholicvote.org. I will be collecting those as time goes on. Hopefully we can make it a regular segment because we'd like to tap into Josh's wisdom.
I can't wait.
It's going to be great.
Buckle up.
Buckle up. All I got to say.
We have some Josh splaining going on. So good.
So, yes, but thank you so much. Best thing you can do for us is pray for us. We're praying for you. St. Thomas More, Our Lady Guadalupe, and St. Fidelis. Pray for us. And we'll see you guys on Friday. Peace.